Number 10. Henry Lee Lucas. Henry Lee Lucas is one of America's most infamous and controversial serial killers, a man whose confessions to hundreds of murders were later proven to be largely fabricated. But one murder he definitely committed was that of his own mother, Viola Lucas. Growing up, Lucas endured a childhood of unimaginable cruelty. His mother was a violent alcoholic who frequently beat him, forced him to wear dresses, and made him watch as she had sex with various men. She once hit him so hard with a wooden board that it fractured his skull, leaving him with permanent brain damage. Years of abuse built up inside him, and in 1960, at the age of 23, Lucas finally snapped. He got into a violent argument with his mother in their home, and the confrontation escalated rapidly. Lucas grabbed a knife and slit her throat, killing her almost instantly. He was convicted of her murder and sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison, but he served only 10 years before being released on parole in 1970. After his release, Lucas went on a cross-country killing spree, confessing to over 300 murders, although investigators eventually determined that he was only responsible for a small fraction of them. He was convicted of 11 murders and sentenced to death, but his sentence was commuted to life in prison when Texas temporarily abolished the death penalty. He died in prison of natural causes in 2001. His mother's murder was the only one he never denied, and it marked the beginning of one of the most bizarre and controversial criminal careers in American history. Number 9. Daniel Tavares. Daniel Tavares was a man whose capacity for violence seemed to know no bounds, and his reign of terror began with the murder of his own mother. In 1991, at the age of 22, Tavares engaged in a heated argument with his mother, Ann Tavares, in their home in Massachusetts. The argument escalated quickly into a physical confrontation, and in a fit of uncontrollable rage, Tavares grabbed a knife and stabbed his mother to death. He was convicted of her murder and sentenced to prison, but the story did not end there. In 2007, after serving his sentence, Tavares was released and moved to Washington State, where he married a woman named Brianne. His violent tendencies had not subsided during his time behind bars. Within months of his release, he killed 2 people, a married couple named Brian and Katie Mock, in a vicious attack in their own home. He was arrested and later pleaded guilty to their murders. During the investigation, authorities also linked him to the 1988 murder of a woman whose body had been found buried in a backyard. Tavares is currently serving multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. His mother's murder was only the beginning of a long and bloody criminal career that would eventually claim the lives of multiple innocent victims. Before we continue, please support us by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. We are on a mission to hit our first 1,000 subscribers, and we honestly can't do this without your help. So please help us so we can keep making more videos like this. Thank you very much. Let's continue. Number 8. Charles Whitman. Charles Whitman was a former Marine and engineering student at the University of Texas at Austin, a man who seemed to have a promising future ahead of him. But beneath the surface, he was plagued by severe headaches, violent outbursts, and a growing sense of paranoia that would eventually drive him to commit one of the most infamous mass shootings in American history. On the morning of August 1, 1966, Whitman took a knife and traveled to the apartment of his mother, Margaret Whitman, in Austin. He stabbed her to death in a brutal and methodical attack, and when he was finished, he placed her body tenderly on the bed, as if she were merely sleeping. He then returned to his own home, where his wife, Kathy Whitman, was still asleep. Without hesitation, he stabbed her 5 times in the chest, killing her instantly. He left a note confessing to both murders, explaining that he wanted to spare them the shame of what he was about to do. Later that morning, Whitman went to the University of Texas campus, ascended the clock tower, and opened fire on the students below, killing 14 more people and wounding over 30 before police shot and killed him. The official autopsy later revealed a pecan-sized tumor in his brain, which some experts believe may have contributed to his violent behavior and deteriorating mental state. Number 7. Adam Lanza. Adam Lanza was a deeply troubled young man with a documented history of mental illness and social isolation. He had been diagnosed with autism and was reportedly obsessed with video games, mass shootings, and firearms. His mother, Nancy Lanza, was a known gun enthusiast who kept a collection of weapons in their home, including the rifles and handguns that Adam would later use to commit one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history. On the morning of December 14, 2012, Lanza took his mother's guns from the safe and used one of them to shoot his mother Nancy 4 times in the head while she was still lying in bed. She never saw it coming and had no chance to defend herself. After killing her, Lanza dressed in tactical gear and drove to Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, a place he had once attended as a child. He forced his way into the school and carried out a brutal massacre, murdering 20 children and 6 adult staff members in just a few minutes. When police arrived at the scene, Lanza took his own life with a single gunshot to the head. His motive remains unclear to this day, as he left behind no definitive suicide note or explanation for his actions. Number 6. Kip Kinkel. Kip Kinkel was only 15 years old when he committed one of the most shocking double murders in Oregon history, a crime that would be followed by a school shooting that left 2 students dead. In May 1998, Kinkel had been struggling with severe mental illness, exhibiting signs of paranoia, depression, and violent fantasies. He had recently been expelled from Thurston High School for bringing a gun to school, and was facing the prospect of his parents discovering his expulsion. According to his later confession, he decided to kill his parents to spare them the shame of having a son who was a failure. On the night of May 20, 1998, Kinkel shot his father, William Kinkel, in the back of the head as he watched television, killing him instantly. He then placed a blanket over his father's body and waited for his mother to come home. Hours later, when Faith Kinkel arrived, he shot her multiple times in the garage. He then drove to his high school the next morning and opened fire in the cafeteria, murdering 2 students and wounding 25 others. He was arrested and later pleaded guilty to the murders of his parents and the 2 students. He was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 5. John List. John List was a seemingly respectable accountant, a devoted father, and a Sunday school teacher who appeared to have a perfect life. But behind this facade, he was drowning in debt and desperately afraid of losing the family's upper-class lifestyle. He believed that if he died, his family would face poverty and moral decay, so he decided to kill them all to save their souls. On November 9, 1971, List systematically murdered his entire family inside their sprawling mansion in Westfield, New Jersey. He began with his wife Helen, shooting her in the head. He then shot his mother, Alma, his 16-year-old daughter Patricia, his 15-year-old son Frederick, and his 13-year-old son John Jr. He laid their bodies out in the mansion's ballroom and left a lengthy letter explaining his religious reasoning. He then disappeared for 18 years, living under a false identity in Virginia, where he remarried and settled down. He was finally captured in 1989 after the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, and his former neighbor recognized him. He was convicted of 5 murders and died in prison in 2008. Number 4. Lowell Lee Andrews. Lowell Lee Andrews was a brilliant University of Kansas sophomore who seemed to have everything going for him. He was a biology major, a bassoon player in the college band, and a deeply religious young man who appeared to have a promising future ahead of him. But underneath this calm exterior, Andrews was deeply resentful of his family's strict religious lifestyle and desperate to collect his inheritance. He saw his parents as obstacles to the life of leisure he craved. On the evening of November 28, 1958, Andrews took a .22 caliber rifle, the same one he had used for target practice earlier that day, and walked into his home in Wolcott, Kansas. His father, William Andrews, was reading in the living room. Without warning, Andrews shot him twice in the back of the head. His mother, Opal Andrews, heard the shots and rushed in from the kitchen. She moved toward her son, but he turned the rifle on her and shot her 3 times, and then 3 more times as she tried to crawl away. His 20-year-old sister, Jenny Marie, was in the room as well. He shot her between the eyes without hesitation. After the murders, Andrews calmly drove to a movie theater in Topeka and watched Mardi Gras, a musical comedy, as if nothing had happened. He was arrested shortly after and confessed to the killings, stating that he had planned the murders for months. He was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and executed by hanging on November 30, 1962. He told a cellmate he regretted that his sister's boyfriend got away, believing the boyfriend would have punished him. Number 3. Ronald DeFeo Jr. Ronald DeFeo Jr. is perhaps best known for the murders that inspired the Amityville horror book and film franchise. But the reality of what happened in that house is far more terrifying than any fictional version. On November 13, 1974, DeFeo shot and killed his entire family inside their home in Amityville, New York. He used a .35 caliber lever-action rifle, the same weapon he would later describe as a deer gun. He first shot his parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo, in their bed while they slept. He then proceeded to murder his 2 brothers, Mark and John, and his 2 sisters, Dawn and Allison, each shot multiple times in their rooms. DeFeo initially tried to claim that a mob hitman had committed the murders, but he later confessed to the killings. He was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. He died in prison in 2021. His defense team attempted to use an insanity defense, claiming he heard voices, but the jury rejected it, and he spent the rest of his life behind bars. Before we continue, please support us by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. We are on a mission to hit our first 1,000 subscribers, and we honestly can't do this without your help. So please help us so we can keep making more videos like this. Thank you very much. Let's continue. Number 2. Pedro Rodrigues Filho. Pedro Rodrigues Filho, better known as Pedrinho Matador, or Killer Pete, is one of Brazil's most notorious serial killers, claiming to have murdered over 100 people, many of them criminals. His reign of violence began with a deeply personal act of revenge against his own father. Filho's father had murdered Filho's mother in a brutal attack, a horrific act that left Pedro seething with rage and a burning desire for vengeance. However, his father was not imprisoned for that specific murder. Instead, he was incarcerated for a separate crime. Fate brought father and son together in the same prison, and Filho saw his opportunity. He confronted his father in the prison yard, and in a fit of uncontrollable rage, he stabbed his father 22 times, one more than his father had inflicted on his mother. But he did not stop there. In a display of almost unimaginable brutality, Filho removed his father's heart, bit into it, and spat it out, declaring that he had consumed his father's evil. He was eventually arrested and spent decades in Brazilian prisons, where he continued his killing spree inside the system, murdering dozens of fellow inmates and guards. Filho was convicted of 71 murders but claims to have slain more than 100. He was freed in 2007 due to a Brazilian law about maximum time served, but he later returned to prison for other crimes. His life and crimes inspired the television show Dexter, which features a similar vigilante serial killer protagonist. Number 1. Edmund Kemper. Edmund Kemper is one of the most terrifying figures in American criminal history, a man whose towering 6'9" frame and genius-level IQ masked a bottomless well of rage, directed primarily at his mother. Clarnell Strandberg was a domineering woman who belittled him constantly and once made him sleep in the basement because she feared he would assault his sisters. By 1973, Kemper had already murdered his paternal grandparents and 2 female college students, but his mother was always his ultimate prize. On the night of April 20, 1973, he waited until she went to bed, then crept into her room carrying a claw hammer. She was already in a deep sleep when he brought the hammer down onto her skull with devastating force. He struck her repeatedly, crushing her head into a pulp, and then he decapitated her body. In a grotesque ritual of revenge, he performed sexual acts with her severed head and threw her vocal cords down the garbage disposal because, as he later told investigators, she had talked too much. He then called the police and calmly confessed. He was convicted of 8 counts of first-degree murder and remains incarcerated at the California Medical Facility. He has been denied parole multiple times. That's all today. Please subscribe. See you in the next video.